Neptune is going retrograde through Pisces, and it's currently entering today the degree of Pisces, the 25th degree of Pisces, called the purging of the priesthood. There will always be corruption. Sometimes it is best to start again, to refresh, rooting out corruption. A multitude of minor and major ego adjustments add up to a life of interactions with family and associates. Yet these processes are not fully sufficient to deal with core issues of our shadow nature, to take us to another level of awareness wherein we can see ourselves for what we are and let go of the deepest imperfection of being. We need to experience purification. Very often this is by fire, in other words, catharsis. We live in a very dark and terrible age, and we have to release ourselves from the expectation that that darkness will engulf us. There is hope for the courageous, determined, passionate aspirant. With these qualities we can be free of the corruption that has blinded us from soul consciousness. So it's about ridding ourselves of negative thought. And another wisdom, we project our disappointments in the manner we treat our priests. Big question, this one. And Neptune is returning through this degree, retrograding, having another think about this question. Purging of the priesthood. It refers to Henry VIII, who came to understand that the Catholic Church at that time was very corrupt indeed. These were the wealthy, the landowners, the ones that ate really well and had a good time, compared to the poor people. And this is a bit true of religions generally, is that they don't really practice what they preach. The priesthood usually bends the message and behaves in a different way from how the teaching perhaps should be. Not only true in Christianity, of course, but certainly was true at that time. And this is not then and them. This is now and us. We all have a distorted view of spiritual philosophy, the spiritual teachings. We have warped our understanding of what we've been shown and told to suit us, to suit ourselves. And this is a part of the human condition. We bend truth to our own purposes in most cases. It is very, very few people that don't do that. And that these are the people that don't do that, that we want for our priests. And yet we don't get them. Very few people are actually in their integrity and presenting the spiritual teachings that they have learned. What can we do about this? Well, first of all, we have to be very discriminating about what we believe. And it's very useful to start from the assumption that what we're told is slightly wrong, if not very wrong indeed. That we do not actually get told 100% of the truth. Firstly, that's because the truth doesn't exist. It cannot exist. It's a subjective phenomenon here on earth. Maybe there is an absolute truth. Maybe. But nobody knows this. Secondly, no person can present the truth to any other person, even if it did exist, because every one of us has got an agenda, both the presenter and the listener. So when you go to listen to the words of spiritual teachings from anyone, including here and now with me, I'm going to say it the way I want to say it, and you're going to hear it the way you want to hear it. And all that we're doing is moving ourselves together into a mood, an atmosphere of willingness to explore this question. and to hope that the words resonate so that the listener can actually hold on to that feeling, that knowledge of their spiritual disposition. But to capture it into words that are actually irrefutable, it's just not possible. It's not what we were allowed to do, shall we say, by the circumstances of our existence. Words are not meant to crystallize meaning. That's not their purpose. Words are vibration. There's no such thing as a definitive meaning for any word, because you have to speak it. And when you speak it, you give it tone. And when you give it tone, there's an emotional quality that impacts upon the listener as much as the specific meaning. In fact, in neurolinguistic programming, they've determined that the meaning itself is only worth 7% of the communication, whereas the tone is worth 30-something%. In other words, how you say something is much more important than what you say. So the word cannot communicate without atmosphere, without the waveform of atmosphere. It's a mood that's being communicated in tone. And this is true of the spiritual side of life. It's exactly what we're trying to awaken within us. We don't really want our religion, our spirituality, to be science. We want science to be science. Here are the facts. That's the truth as far as you can measure it. And we want our spirituality to be, here is the atmosphere, here is the mood, here is the sense of wonder. And for us to be truly in alignment with our soul, we have to awaken qualities. And that necessarily means tone. All of the qualities that you can think of has a tone to it. Honor, courage, love, compassion, truth, mercy. They awaken within us a resonance that has a feeling quality. If it doesn't, then it's not really meaningful, because we are feeling beings. That's a part of who we are. And if that is absent, then it doesn't reach us. It most certainly doesn't touch the soul. So spiritual teachings, when they're written down, necessarily are false, because they're trying to crystallize, in other words, turn into a particle, that which is a wave. By its very nature, it must include that at the very least. So those priests that are saying, we know the truth, and we're telling you what the truth is, they're basically either wrong or lying. It's not knowable. Their philosophy just is inadequate for them to pass on what they cannot understand themselves. How could they understand it? The greatest minds have not come up with the teaching of what truth is, or even what love is. These two words, we don't know what they mean. And if you have a spiritual teaching which excludes truth, which excludes love, then how can it be a spiritual teaching? So how can anyone say they understand what you should do when they don't know what gives rise to the should? They don't know what truth and love are, and they don't walk their own talk. So how can we possibly think that a priest can tell us what to do? And we cannot perhaps understand this fully until we see that they become very rich indeed compared to the rest of us. And that was the case in Henry VIII's time. It sometimes is the case today. There's a lot of very, very poor people, and not many of them are priests, really. You know, there's this to look at. And when you actually really look into this question and you check out, what do you believe yourself? Where did that information come from, that opinion that you're holding to be truth? And you examine your own spiritual philosophy. I promise you, you'll find it it doesn't check out. It just doesn't check out. In other words, not only does it feel slightly wrong, but it is wrong logically. You can't explain it logically. Very often I've had debates with people with strongly held spiritual beliefs, and inevitably they go back to claiming that some authority is right, such as the written word in the book. It says so in the book, therefore it is truth. Well, that's another... How can that be? How can anyone write the truth down in a book when truth is not defined? And a book is time dependent. You write something in a book according to the moment in hand. So if a book was written a long time ago, what the words actually mean, that's changed. You know, it meant something different then to what it means now. It doesn't take very long for a language to die off, to age. Even 500 years since Shakespeare, many of those words mean exactly the opposite of what they seem to mean. Words like vulgar, for example, doesn't mean what it was meant to mean, or even nice, and simple words like that. They've changed their meaning. So how about the serious words that really, really mean things? They've changed as well. So we're going through a period to review very carefully on the level of thought and feeling what it is we hold to be our spiritual belief and our spiritual attitude, and where did it come from. That's the Neptune job at the moment, having another look at that.